Welcome back to ShopDog-Garage. It's going to be another Harley video. ShopDog's out investigating his yard, making sure no squirrels are up to anything nefarious. One thing to report is I went this morning, got a quarter 28 nut, not a very common size. So we're going to have that do our clamping here, and that's going to make this just go a lot nicer. So we'll get back on that. Once that's kind of headed where it needs to go, actually, I think once that whole thing is routed, I think the following thing is going to be getting this cable built up. Because once that's built up, and I've got my grounds built up, that's another thing. I'm going to definitely put a red. I have red heat shrink. But once that's all done, then I can start working on my grounds, my main power feed, and we'll go from there. So hopefully I can get quite a bit of this figured out today. While I have this set up, one of the reasons I have this extra ground going to the tail light is the fact that the swing arm is rubber isolated. The shocks are rubber isolated. Where would ground come from? I'm actually surprised that we're getting any grounding at all. So something's touching somewhere, but only kinda. So if I come up here, see, I'm getting 400 ohms over to that, but I have a feeling that changes as things move. So we're not going to rely on that. We're going to provide our very own ground, because you can see here, see, I haven't grounded this to the chassis yet. Oh, there we go. See, there's 1 ohm, but I don't know from where, because this is rubber mounted. I'm sure it's just because something is touching something, you know, it's an incidental. So we're going to make sure we ground the crap out of this. So here's our concept here, except I think I'm also going to go ahead and pull that up and around and plug in as well. I think that's a good spot to do it. Thought I'd give you an update. As I'm building this up, I'm layering everything I need because I can't slide things over this connector. So all of this is already extended, heat shrunk, and all prepared. And then what I'm doing, because I can't slide this whole sleeve in, is see, I've got a smaller sleeve and a bigger sleeve. So slide the bigger sleeve over. I'm slowly getting all my heat shrink stack up in here. So you can see I got first layer, second layer, and then this one actually bonds the two together. I'll get that slid on. So then before I connect those, if you forget your heat shrink now, you can't put it on later. And with that, that is now extended and secure. That should work pretty nice. That looks like something that'll work. Remember, we've got that cover that goes here. This, because I didn't really want to run them exactly the same, because this is probably very noisy, and we don't actually want those to be very noisy. So we're using that same point with 2 different kinds of clips. And you can see here was that thinner heat stuff. Here's the thicker that I'd slid over. This will be behind a cover. This is all about protecting it, not about pretty. This is also, because I have to assume heat sits here when you're idling. So we just want to protect things. Hopefully this is fine down here. But the next thing we got to do, find some heat sleeve to run this up into the battery tray. But I think before I do that, I may go ahead and get started on this. Okay, so what we've done with the tack wire and that vacuum switch is we've got them stuffed back in here. They're long, so you could fish them back out and use them if you wanted in the future. All of this is going to hang right here off of the coil when I find it, because it's around here somewhere. Because the next thing I got to do, of course, a little dielectric and some spark plug boots. And this shows our general concept. I don't have that down all the way, but you can see. So the wire will be protected and heat shrunk all the way up into this, what I'm assuming is going to be a warm area. Now I've just got to figure out how long these need to be and get some shrink on them to protect them as well. They should be roughly that, but let's get that put together real quick. Well, I'm not going to lie about that. That was actually really not very fun. That's a terrible place to have screws. So anyway, that's on. we'll deal with that. These little new sleeves, they need to be curled and they need to relax a little. We'll get those on in a few minutes. There. That doesn't look terrible. Pretty happy with that. Nice. Everything's going to be safe, out of the way. Because remember, we got that cover. And of course, you got old man big boots here. So we don't want, you know, because this is, you know, shifty. We don't want them hitting anything. So that's why we got that all nicely retained. So the only thing left down here, obviously, is the ignition feed. Or, well, the, it's not an ignition feed. That's actually charged the battery. Still got to do that one and this one. Those won't take very long. I think those might be my next approach, actually. Let's get those out of the way after, I think ShopDog could take a break. It's pretty nice out. We're going to go play outside for a little bit. I'm running to town in a little bit for something else, so I figured I better take a look. I will see if I can get a red piece of number 4. Apparently I don't have one. I have ends. But here's how I plan to do the hookup. Main ground and starter feed are just going to come off this end here. And then everything else will come off the top of the terminals. I don't see why that wouldn't work. Should be plenty of room in here for that. I will verify that before I commit to it. But, you know, these guys really have to be from the side. And once you do that, they really need this spacer. And you know, by then the bolt's getting short. Also, it sucks fighting 3 things at once, putting things together. So I'm going to take advantage of this weird block. That's what I'm going to do. Obviously missing some hardware to attach the seat up front. And I'm wondering if this rides on these tubes and gouges it up, or if something actually goes on there like a little plate. But the important thing is, no matter how big you were, you couldn't squish that down enough for that to be an issue. So that makes me feel a little better. It's just doing a little work and noticed something I wanted to point out that drives me crazy. This is a machined surface. Somebody painted it. So now I gotta clean the paint out, because otherwise the starter won't register. You can see I've already started working on it. I'll blow all that off when I'm done, but don't paint registered surfaces. Okay, that has actually taken a lot more hassle than I expected it to, but now the starter will sit in and flush. You got to do things like that now while they're easy to get at. Don't paint registered surfaces. Anything that's machined is on purpose. The one that really drives me crazy is anything that's a taper machine for like a ball joint or something. Just don't. You can never get them sanded right. Slowly working through this. Okay, so we now have our new wire, which we left red up here to make it really easy to not screw that up, but I didn't want it to show down here. You know, got a theme going, but I wanted it to be real easy to not screw that up. So we did that. I think I'm going to figure out that ground wire actually winds up right here. So I think temporarily I'm just going to bolt the starter to this transmission plate with some temporary bolts. Oh, and I took the nose off of it. I don't want that shooting across the room. So I'll probably put some temp bolts in here to ground the starter and to act as my little ground point for further testing, because I don't need this cover and none of that matters for what I'm doing, but I need it to be grounded nicely. Okay, time for a little update. So I think we've got all of our positive terminals pretty happy. Our sad terminal, as Derek calls it, that's the one that goes down to the chassis. This is the one for the both of those turn signals, as well as the ground for the computer. So you can see, and what I've got right here, I found an old bracket to come off that point on the starter. And if you look at that distance, and then you come over here, and you look where the ground hole is relative to that. That's why we're doing that. I needed that length to be pretty close. So, because once this belt cover and everything is on, this ground actually moves to that. So for now, we've just got a nice chunk of metal and a couple of temporary bolts holding the starter in, Got all the starter stuff off there so it doesn't go flying. So this one that I put this nice little coax cover on, and that looks cool to show that it's really red. That is the feed from the voltage regulator. This wire here, and I'll probably put a piece of sleeve on there later, but that is the power to the computer. And of course its ground is in here. You saw all of that. Let me see if you can see from the other side. Yeah, you can kind of see in there how nice and tidy that is. In fact, let me grab a light so you can see. Yeah, ShopDog's getting bored. You can see how nice and tidy all that is. Okay. Oil. There is the feed to kick the starter over. Here is how the positive cable comes up for the starter. I'm taking advantage of all this room in this hold down here. Remembering just got to leave that open, and I think a strap just comes down to that point down there. In fact, I'm hoping it's kind of like a bungee-ish type strap. That'd be the best for us. So all our wires are protected, out of the way, not hitting anything. All of these wires are safe and protected, not hitting anything. These wires, safe, protected, not hitting anything. These wires aren't done yet. This is the ground that we're going to add for the tail light, or not the tail light, the brake light. Don't know where I'm going to ground that yet. It's way too late to run that up into this mess, so it's probably grounding to the motor. It might even ground here. We'll see. But these are all the wires I have left. So 3 of them go to that light, 2 of them go to a brake switch. I don't know physically where that's located. So without knowing that, that does make that a little harder. So I think Brian's coming by for a little while tomorrow to show me where that mounts. I'm assuming it's here-ish. But, you know, we don't know. And I have ordered what I'm going to do, because I know this swing arm has to come off. And I know that the license plate and brake light also need to be able to come off. But all the wiring passes through this little gutter here. So I have ordered a tiny kit of little bullet connectors that have little nylon sleeves over them. That should actually be here tomorrow, even though it's Sunday, because that's the world we live in now. And what we're going to do is there's going to be a set of connectors right here and a connector over here. It may not be a bullet connector over here. This may actually be like a weather pack or something. So that when they do have to pull this swing arm, all they have to do is unplug these 3 wires here, unplug them here. That light can come off, be out of their way. This swing arm could come out, not affect the wiring in any way. And then what I think we're going to do on these guys is use some of those bullet connectors as well. We will rough in about how long they need to be. We will terminate the one end. The other end is going to have to get terminated later. Or he can even reuse what's on them. If I recall, yeah. So if I put positives on that end, get rid of this stinking... No, we would cut that off and redo it. So we could make that those little bullet connectors as well, so that it's easy for him to just hook those up. So, and the reason, and I know I mentioned it in another segment of the video, the reason we added that ground wire is that everything's rubber mounted on this swing arm. Does ground come and go? I know LEDs are a little more fussy about that than light bulbs may have been. So I'm also super curious, because in the old harness there was one more big ground wire right here. Where did that come from and where did it go? Because something tells me that I need one more ground point. I do have this grounding to the frame here and to the battery here, and obviously it'll be grounded to the motor. I would like to have one more motor to ground point, so, or chassis to motor ground. I don't know if that will be, you know, the one that's sitting there all cleaned up and I figure out where it went, or do I just grab one of these and do it. So don't know yet, but I'm assuming I need one more ground. I actually don't have any empirical reason to understand how all this works out. So, you know, but a motor's a motor and a chassis is a chassis. So I have to assume that quiet is never a bad thing. Also, it's not my favorite option using both of these, but trying to get one bolt through all three things and hold it in, what a nightmare that would have been. So I think the fact that this has the snowmobile position on it, might as well use it. So this may be the end for today. Don't know. We will, if there's still more video in a minute, then it wasn't. Just kidding. We're not quite done for today yet. We're getting close. I mean, I'm actually running out of things I can do without a little bit more knowledge. But I'm not there yet. God, I still wonder what that's for. Must have something to do with the exhaust. So there's a lot of things. I just don't know where things go. But I'm going to start kind of looking and seeing if I can figure out where that went. Well, I am not finding a natural spot for that. So I'm going to have to give up on that for a bit. And saw a little piece of something sitting here. So, pretty happy here. I think all of that's going to work. I seriously doubt I have this in the right place, but at least it's out of my way. Don't care right now. It's safe. This is definitely out of the way. Will be nice and safe. There's some kind of breather vent. This is very close to where it's going to wind up. And obviously will reach. Because, you know, that's part of what we need to know. I need to figure out where the strap is. I'd like to know where the heck those seat things bounce. Is there like a plate or something they're supposed to be on? Or do they just tear up all your paint? Because that seems weird. Happy with the starter. Real happy here. I literally can't do anything with this until I know where the brake line switch mounts. And when I get those connectors for the plate. Which, honestly, I think that's kind of where I'm at. The brake switch is just a couple spades, so it's nothing crazy there. And it's 2 wires. So loom those, get them safe. Get a couple spades on there, boom, boom, Bob's your uncle. And that's a switch that once there's pressure in the line, you know, it closes the switch, boom, turns on the light. Well, tells the computer to turn on the light. That's one thing that's kind of nice. You know, we've gone over how we're going to do the license plate and taillight assembly. I just don't know, besides maybe some cleanup, that there's really anything else I can do in here tonight. So, think I'm kind of wrapping it until I see Brian. Not a lot else to do. At some point, love to have him, you know, mount the seat or something, pull the bike down, and swing the handlebars side to side. I'd love to get a good feel for how much that takes. But outside of that, I'm getting really close to ready to start testing. In fact, I could probably start testing quite a few things, even without these wires. So let me think on that for a minute. We're doing our initial smoke test with the NOCO, because it will stop things if things are going bad. Key is currently off. There should be no power to the system. Nothing should happen, no matter what I do, and nothing does. Can't call it a smoke test if you're not going to check. So we're going to turn the car on. Headlight just came on. That's a thing. And it goes high and low. High, low. I don't know that blinkers work with the bike. Oh my god, blinkers work with the bike off. That one works. Oh, well, technically the bike's not off because this only turns off the ignition. Don't know it. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, something funky there I gotta deal with. Okay, I did something and now I'm in some mode. So, I don't know how all that works. God, that's crazy. Headlights running. All right, so what else can we actually test at this stage? Let me hook up a meter and we will check some brake lights. In case you're wondering why I'm worried about grounds, watch this. This side, no ground. This side is ground. So that's interesting. So let me get that grounded down. So we definitely do not have the chassis grounded as well as I would like. See, nothing here, nothing here. But obviously enough of it's grounded, because look at that. Off the forks. So this is floating. This is ground. Okay, that'll work for what I need to do. So I'm going to continue doing some testing. I just twisted those for now, just for testing. And then a classic example of just believing things as they say. Tail light. That was the brake switch. And brake light. You come around here. Well, we thought blue and red were the opposite of what they are. So the wiring on that is the opposite. So you can see we've got our cars on. So that lights up the license plate. That says, hey, we're running. Handbrake. Boom. It does the little thing. It gets brighter. And let's say we used the foot brake. That should be this one. I am not left-handed. And see? Brake on, brake off. Brake on, brake off. So as long as the hydraulics work, that switch will work. This stuff, it's good to know, it's backwards. This is not wired the way it said it was. It's the exact opposite colors of our computer, so that's awesome. But easy enough. I will fix it in the harness at this point. No one else will ever know. Well, except anybody who's watching this. Let's see if I have left and right turn signals. So if I go here, go to volts, grab that. Let's grab us a ground. We have no idea where our good ground is at the moment. Well, we know the engine's a good ground. We'll just grab that one. We got nothing. Okay, so if I just hold it, it goes into, okay, so I should have, yep, left turn. So you got to hold it for a second, and you can see left turn, and then it stops after a while. That's pretty neat. So now, let's move over to right turn. So it doesn't work quite the same as a car, but let's face it, how many people even bother using turn signals on a motorbike? So if I hold it for a second and let go, okay, so it's flashing there and it's flashing there. Okay, so that wiring works. That's what I wanted to know. If I held both of them, that would go in four-way. It says it on the things. We know bright and dim works. Horn isn't going to do anything because he doesn't have one. If I move that to run, oh boy, this might be a bad idea. But what happens? That works. Okay. Wiring, that worked. Perfect. Huh. Outside of ignition stuff then, so far everything works. Pretty happy. And with that, that's going to be our video for tonight. Now I feel pretty happy. Everything that I can test actually works. I do need to ground the chassis, which I suspected, which is what I kind of was hoping I was doing here. But that obviously doesn't go through to ground very well. But at least it became a ground distribution point. I will probably pull that apart, clean it up, and see if I can get a good ground there. But if I can't, then that's what a ground strap's for. We'll find a good spot on the chassis and do that, because I definitely want this frame to be ground. I don't like the idea of only a few areas being ground. And some areas must be, because where is this getting ground? Well, probably through the handlebars, because I did run some grounds. Huh. So, yeah, learning quite a bit. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Oh, and look at that. Wearing a ShopDog shirt. Hope that showed up. Anyway, have a good night.